My name is Nathan Mercer, and my wife thinks I'm a failure. She doesn't say it directly, Camille's too polished for that, but she doesn't need to. The message comes through crystal clear every time she mentions her boss. Philip closed another $1 million deal today, she said last Tuesday, not looking up from her phone as I microwaved leftover pizza. He's taking the whole team to that new steakhouse downtown, the one with the 3-month waiting list. I grunted something non-committal and watched the cheese bubble. Philip Drake. Even his name sounded like success. CEO of Drake Industries, 45 years old, drives a black Mercedes that costs more than I make in 2 years. Everything I'm not, according to my wife of 12 years. You know what your problem is, Nate? Camille finally looked up, her green eyes sharp with that particular brand of disappointment I'd grown accustomed to. You'll never be Philip. There it was, the truth she'd been dancing around for months, maybe years. I pulled my sad excuse for dinner from the microwave and sat across from her at our kitchen table, the same one we'd bought at a garage sale when we first got married and thought love could stretch $1. Tell me more about what makes Philip so special, I said, keeping my voice level. After 15 years in project management, I'd learned to control my reactions, especially when dealing with difficult clients or wives. Camille's face lit up like I'd asked about her favorite movie. Where do I start? He's brilliant, obviously. Harvard MBA. Built his company from nothing into a $50 million empire in 10 years. He's decisive, confident, never second-guesses himself like... She caught herself, but we both knew how that sentence ended. Like me, I finished for her. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. I took a bite of rubbery pizza and chewed thoughtfully. What else, besides the money and the confidence? She warmed to the subject, apparently mistaking my interest for admiration rather than intelligence gathering. He's sophisticated, travels to Europe twice a year, speaks 3 languages. When he walks into a room, people notice. They respect him immediately. And me? Camille sighed, the sound carrying 12 years of accumulated frustration. You're a good man, Nate. You're reliable, steady, honest to a fault, but you're... She searched for the right word, trying to soften the blow she was about to deliver. You're ordinary. Ordinary. The word hit like a slap, not because it was cruel, but because it was accurate. I was ordinary. 40 years old, project manager at a mid-sized construction firm, driving a 10-year-old Honda Civic with a dent in the passenger door. I shopped at Target, drank beer from cans, and my idea of fine dining was the local diner where the waitress knew my order. He's everything you're not, Camille continued, apparently deciding honesty was the best policy. Richer, smarter, more powerful. He commands respect. When Philip wants something, he gets it. When he speaks, people listen. I nodded slowly, processing this brutal assessment of my character. You're right. She blinked, clearly expecting an argument. I am? Absolutely. Philip Drake is everything I'm not. I stood up, carrying my plate to the sink. The question is, what am I going to do about it? That night, I lay in bed listening to Camille's even breathing and staring at the ceiling. She was right about everything. Philip was richer. His annual salary probably exceeded my lifetime earnings. Smarter. Harvard MBA versus my state school business degree. More powerful, he commanded a company while I managed construction timelines. But here's what Camille didn't understand about project management. It's not about being the smartest person in the room. It's about seeing all the moving pieces, understanding how they connect, and knowing exactly when to make your move. I started making a list, not on paper, too risky, but in my head. Everything Philip had that I didn't. Everything Camille admired about him. Money, power, respect, sophistication, confidence, the ability to command a room, to make people listen, to get what he wanted. What if I could become all of those things? The idea should have seemed ridiculous. 40-year-old project managers don't suddenly transform into business moguls. But as I lay there in the dark, something shifted in my chest. Not anger exactly, more like clarity. I'd spent 20 years being reliable, steady, ordinary Nathan Mercer, playing by the rules, keeping my head down, accepting whatever scraps life threw my way. And where had it gotten me? A wife who openly fantasized about her boss, a job that barely paid the bills, and a future that stretched ahead like a flat, gray highway to nowhere. Maybe it was time to stop being everything I was and start becoming everything I wasn't. The next morning, I woke up with purpose for the first time in years. Camille was already gone, early meeting with Philip she'd mentioned, so I had the house to myself. I made coffee, real coffee from the good beans I'd been saving, and sat down at my laptop. First, I researched Philip Drake. Amazing what you can learn about someone with an hour and an internet connection. Harvard MBA, class of 2005. Started Drake Industries in 2014 with a $2 million loan from his father-in-law. Specialized in commercial real estate development, primarily strip malls and office complexes. Interesting. I'd been managing construction projects for 15 years, including several commercial developments. I knew the business, knew the players, knew where the bodies were buried. Philip might have the Harvard degree and the fancy office, but I had something more valuable: practical experience and a network of contacts who actually did the work. My phone buzzed. Text from Camille. Working late again. Don't wait up. Working late. Right. I'd been hearing that excuse a lot lately. Philip sure demanded long hours from his employees, or maybe he just demanded them from my wife. I spent the rest of the day researching Drake Industries' client list, their recent projects, their competition. By evening, I had a comprehensive picture of their operation. Impressive, but not invincible. Every company had weaknesses, pressure points, vulnerabilities. Philip's biggest weakness, I realized, was Philip himself. He was arrogant, flashy, the kind of leader who took credit for his team's successes and blamed them for his failures. I'd worked for guys like that. Their employees were always one better offer away from jumping ship. That night, Camille came home at 11:30, smelling like expensive wine and Philip's cologne. She kissed my cheek absently and headed straight for the shower. As the water ran, I noticed her phone on the nightstand, buzzing with notifications. I'm not proud of what I did next, but desperate times call for desperate measures. The phone was password protected, but I knew Camille. Her password was our anniversary date, one of the few sentimental gestures she'd maintained over the years. The messages were from Philip, not work-related messages, not working late messages. Can't stop thinking about this afternoon. Your husband doesn't deserve you. Tomorrow, my office, noon. Wear the red dress. I set the phone down carefully, my hand surprisingly steady. So there it was, the final piece of the puzzle. Camille wasn't just admiring Philip from afar, she was sleeping with him. Everything you're not had become everything she wanted. The shower was still running. I had maybe 5 more minutes before she came out. I scrolled through more messages, weeks of them, months maybe. The affair had been going on since at least Christmas. All those late nights, all those early meetings, all those glowing reports about Philip's brilliance and sophistication. My wife was having an affair with her boss, and she was rubbing my face in it every single day. I deleted the message history, cleared the notifications, and put the phone back exactly where I'd found it. When Camille emerged from the bathroom in her silk robe, I was lying in bed reading a book like nothing had happened. "Good day?" she asked, settling in beside me. "Productive," I said. "Very productive." She was asleep within minutes. I lay awake until dawn, not angry, not hurt, just calculating. Philip Drake had taken my wife. He'd humiliated me in my own home, made me a joke, a cuckold, ordinary Nathan Mercer, whose wife preferred a real man. He was everything I wasn't, richer, smarter, more powerful. But what if I became everything he was? What if I took everything he had, the same way he'd taken everything from me? The next morning, I called in sick to work. First time in 3 years. Instead of going to the office, I drove to the public library and spent 8 hours researching business incorporation, commercial real estate licensing, small business loans, and competitive intelligence. By closing time, I had a plan. Nathan Mercer, ordinary project manager, was about to become extinct. In his place would rise something new, something Philip Drake would never see coming until it was too late. Everything you're not was about to become everything you are. And the best part? Camille would have a front row seat to watch her precious Philip lose everything that made him special: his money, his power, his reputation, his company, his wife. I drove home that evening humming for the first time in months. Camille was in the kitchen, preparing what looked like a celebration dinner: champagne, candles, her best dress. "What's the occasion?" I asked. She beamed at me, genuinely happy for the first time in weeks. "Philip's taking me to the Morrison Awards dinner tomorrow night. It's the biggest commercial real estate event of the year. All the major players will be there." The Morrison Awards. I knew them well, had attended twice as a guest of previous employers. The who's who of Cleveland commercial development, where deals were made and reputations built or destroyed. "That's wonderful," I said, meaning every word. "I'm sure you'll have a great time." Camille looked surprised by my enthusiasm. "You're not upset? I know it's short notice." "Not at all. You deserve to be with someone who appreciates you." I kissed her forehead, breathing in the scent of her perfume. The same perfume she'd been wearing when she came home late last night. "You should definitely go. Make sure everyone sees you with Philip." She studied my face, looking for signs of sarcasm or hurt, but I kept my expression neutral. After a moment, she relaxed. "Thank you for understanding, Nate. I know this hasn't been easy for you." "Actually," I said, opening the champagne with a satisfying pop, "I think it's exactly what we both need." We toasted to new beginnings. Camille had no idea how new they were going to be. The Morrison Awards dinner was perfect. Not because I attended, I wasn't invited, but because it gave me 3 hours of uninterrupted time to execute phase 1 of my plan. While Camille and Philip were schmoozing with Cleveland's commercial real estate elite, I was in my garage with a laptop, a phone, and a bottle of bourbon for courage. The garage had become my war room over the past 2 weeks, complete with a whiteboard covered in company names, contact information, and strategic notes. My target for tonight was Donovan Sinclair, a 33-year-old entrepreneur who'd been working with Drake Industries on a mixed-use development project. According to my research and a helpful conversation with a former colleague who'd done electrical work on Donovan's previous projects, the relationship was strained. Philip had been promising results for 6 months while delivering excuses. I'd been watching Donovan's social media for days, learning his patterns. Friday nights, he posted from Mulligan's Pub, a dive bar in Ohio City, where he unwound after difficult weeks. According to his latest Instagram story, tonight qualified as difficult. At 9:15, I walked into Mulligan's wearing jeans and a Browns jersey, looking like every other working-class guy drowning his sorrows in beer and sports highlights. Donovan was exactly where I expected him, sitting alone at the far end of the bar, staring into a whiskey that had seen better days. "Rough week?" I asked, sliding onto the stool next to him. He glanced over, taking in my appearance. I'd calculated this carefully. Nothing threatening, nothing that screamed business meeting, just one guy talking to another. You could say that. His voice carried the weight of frustration and too much alcohol. "You?" "Same. Work's been a nightmare." I ordered a beer and let the silence stretch. In project management, you learn that people want to talk about their problems. You just have to create the space for them to do it. "What kind of work?" Donovan asked after a few minutes. "Construction project management. 20 years of dealing with contractors, deadlines, and clients who promise the moon and deliver cheese." I took a sip of beer. "You?" "Real estate development, or trying to be." He laughed bitterly. "Ever work with someone who talks a big game but can't deliver?" Story of my life. Current situation. Donovan studied me for a moment, probably wondering if he should trust a stranger with his business problems. The alcohol won. I'm working with this company, Drake Industries. Big shot CEO, fancy office, promises everything. 6 months ago, he guaranteed my project would be breaking ground by Christmas. Now he's telling me maybe next summer if I'm lucky. I nodded sympathetically. Philip Drake? His eyes widened. You know him? Know of him. Reputation in the industry. Lot of flash, not always a lot of substance. I paused, letting that sink in. What's the project? Mixed-use development in Tremont. Retail on the ground floor, apartments above. Nothing revolutionary, but the numbers work. Or they would if I could find someone who actually knew how to navigate the permitting process. I knew Tremont well. Had managed 3 projects in that neighborhood over the past 5 years. Knew every inspector, every bureaucrat, every shortcut through the red tape that strangled most developments. Permitting's a nightmare in that area, I said casually. City Council's been cracking down since that mess with the Riverside project 2 years ago. You need someone who knows the right people, the right approach. Exactly. Donovan turned to face me fully, energized by finding someone who understood his problem. Drake keeps telling me he's got connections, but nothing happens. I'm starting to think he's all talk. Probably is. Guys like that, they're good at selling dreams, but not so good at delivering reality. I finished my beer and signaled for another. What's your timeline looking like now? Honestly? I'm thinking about pulling the plug, finding someone else. Might be smart. Cut your losses. Find a company that actually knows the business. We talked for another hour. I learned about his financing, his timeline, his frustrations with Philip's empty promises. More importantly, I learned that he was exactly the type of client I needed. Someone with money, ambition, and a growing hatred for Drake Industries. When I finally left Mulligan's, I had Donovan's business card and a promise to send him some information about alternative approaches to his project. He had no idea he'd just met his new project manager. The next morning, while Camille slept off her celebration hangover, I drove to a small office building in Lakewood. The space was nothing special. 2nd floor, 3 rooms, shared bathroom down the hall. But it was cheap, available immediately, and most importantly, it was mine. I signed a 6-month lease under the name Meridian Development Group, a company that had existed only in my imagination until that moment. By afternoon, I'd opened a business bank account, registered the LLC, and ordered business cards. By evening, I was officially Nathan Mercer, president and CEO of my own commercial development firm. The transformation was intoxicating. For 20 years, I'd been an employee, taking orders, implementing other people's visions, accepting whatever salary they deemed appropriate. Now, I was the boss, the decision maker, the guy who got things done. My first hire was Tanya Rodriguez, a 28-year-old project coordinator who'd been laid off from Drake Industries 3 months earlier. I'd found her through LinkedIn, reached out with a carefully crafted message about a new opportunity with a growing firm. I know this doesn't look like much yet, I said, gesturing around my empty office as she toured the space. But sometimes the best opportunities come in small packages. Tanya was sharp, ambitious, and nursing a serious grudge against Philip Drake. Perfect for my purposes. What happened at Drake? I asked during her interview. Her expression darkened. Budget cuts, they said. But really, Philip wanted to bring in his girlfriend as a consultant, needed to free up salary money. His girlfriend? Some married woman from his investment team. Blonde, thinks she knows everything about development because she read a few books. Tanya's description sounded uncomfortably familiar. Anyway, I got the axe so she could play businesswoman. I hired Tanya on the spot, offering her a 20% raise over her Drake Industries salary and a promise of equity if the company succeeded. She accepted immediately. Next, I reached out to Frank Morrison, a 50-year-old contractor who'd been blacklisted by Drake Industries after a dispute over payment terms. Frank had 30 years of experience and a network of subcontractors who trusted him completely. He also had a very personal reason to want Philip Drake to fail. "You're really going after Drake?" Frank asked when I outlined my business plan over coffee. "I'm going after his market share," I corrected. "Drake Industries has gotten lazy, complacent. They're vulnerable to someone who actually cares about delivering results." Frank grinned. "When do we start?" Within 2 weeks, I had a team, an office, and a business plan. More importantly, I had my first client. Donovan Sinclair officially terminated his contract with Drake Industries and signed with Meridian Development Group, bringing his mixed-use project and his $2.8 million development budget with him. The look on Philip's face when he found out was worth every penny I'd invested in the company. I wasn't there to see it personally, but Tanya had maintained friendships with several Drake Industries employees. According to her sources, Philip had thrown a legendary tantrum when Donovan's termination letter arrived. Shouting, door slamming, threats to sue for breach of contract. The works. "He's asking questions about you," Tanya reported during our Monday morning meeting. "Wants to know where you came from, how you got Donovan to switch." "Let him ask. Public information." I leaned back in my chair, savoring the moment. "What else?" "He's telling people you're a nobody, small-time project manager trying to play in the big leagues." "He's not wrong. I am a small-time project manager." I smiled. "For now." The beauty of my plan was its simplicity. I wasn't trying to destroy Philip overnight. That would be obvious, traceable, potentially illegal. Instead, I was doing exactly what I'd told Frank, going after his market share by being better at his own game. Drake Industries succeeded because they were the biggest fish in a small pond. They charged premium prices for adequate service, relying on Philip's reputation and connections to maintain their client base. But reputation was fragile, and connections could be redirected. I spent my evenings studying Drake's client list, identifying the dissatisfied ones, the ones who might be open to alternatives. I attended industry events, networked with suppliers and subcontractors, slowly building relationships that had taken Philip years to establish. The key was patience. Every client I stole, every relationship I built, every small victory chipped away at Drake Industries' foundation. Philip was so focused on maintaining his image as the big-shot CEO that he didn't notice the ground shifting beneath his feet. At home, Camille remained oblivious to my new career. As far as she knew, I was still the same ordinary project manager, still working for the same construction company, still everything Philip wasn't. I encouraged this perception, complaining about work stress and money problems while secretly funneling my savings into Meridian Development Group. "Philip's been in a terrible mood lately," she mentioned one evening, apparently unaware of the irony. "Some competitor is trying to poach his clients." "That's rough," I said, not looking up from my laptop. "Business can be brutal." "He thinks it's corporate espionage. Someone with inside information about his projects." "Sounds paranoid. Maybe he's just not as good at his job as he thinks." Camille shot me a sharp look. "Philip's brilliant. This is obviously someone playing dirty." "Of course. Couldn't possibly be legitimate competition." She studied my face, looking for signs of sarcasm, but I kept my expression neutral. After 12 years of marriage, I'd learned to hide my thoughts when necessary. "You've been different lately," she said finally. "Different how?" "I don't know. More confident, I guess. Like you're planning something." I closed the laptop and gave her my full attention. "Maybe I am." "What kind of something?" "The kind that might surprise you." She laughed, the sound carrying a hint of condescension. "Nathan Mercer, man of mystery. What's next, a motorcycle and leather jacket?" "We'll see." That night, I lay in bed listening to Camille's breathing and planning my next move. Donovan's project was proceeding ahead of schedule and under budget, exactly the kind of success story that generated word-of-mouth referrals. 2 other potential clients had already reached out, both of them refugees from Drake Industries' declining service standards. Philip was starting to notice the pattern, starting to ask questions. Good. Let him wonder. Let him worry. Let him realize that his empire wasn't as secure as he'd thought. Everything you're not was becoming everything you could be. And this was just the beginning. The first time I saw Philip Drake in person, he was smaller than I'd expected. Not physically. He was tall, well-built, expensive suit hanging perfectly on his frame. But there was something diminished about him. Maybe it was the way he kept checking his phone during what should have been an important conversation. Maybe it was the slight tremor in his hand as he lifted his coffee cup. Or maybe it was the knowledge that his empire was cracking, one client at a time. I was sitting 3 tables away at Grind Coffee, pretending to read emails while actually observing my target. Philip was meeting with Helena Ashford, the lead investor who controlled the majority of Drake Industries' financing. Based on their body language, the conversation wasn't going well. "The numbers don't lie, Philip," Helena was saying, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being heard. "Client retention is down 18% over the last quarter. Project delays are up 30%. Something's wrong." Philip leaned forward, his charm offensive in full swing. "It's temporary, Helena. Market fluctuations, some bad luck with permits. Nothing we can't handle." "Bad luck?" Helena's eyebrow arched elegantly. "Donovan Sinclair didn't leave because of bad luck. He left because you couldn't deliver what you promised. Donovan was poached by some upstart company, corporate espionage, probably. We're looking into legal options." I smiled into my coffee cup. Legal options. Philip was grasping at straws, trying to blame external forces for his internal failures. Classic behavior for someone who'd never had to fight for market share. "What's the name of this upstart company?" Helena asked. "Meridian Development Group. Bunch of nobodies trying to make a name for themselves by stealing our clients." "And they're succeeding?" Philip's jaw tightened. "Temporarily. But we have resources they don't, connections they can't match. They'll burn out." Helena made a note in her leather portfolio. "I want a comprehensive report on this Meridian company. Who's running it, where their financing comes from, what their strategy is. If they're a real threat, we need to understand them." "They're not a real threat," Philip insisted. "Trust me." "I trusted you with Donovan Sinclair," Helena replied coolly. "How did that work out?" I finished my coffee and left before their conversation concluded, but I'd heard enough. Philip was worried, defensive, starting to make the kind of mistakes that came from panic rather than strategy. Helena, on the other hand, was asking exactly the right questions, which meant it was time for phase 2 of my plan. Helena Ashford was old money, third-generation wealth built on smart investments and careful relationship management. She valued competence over charm, results over promises. Everything Philip wasn't, in other words. I'd been researching her for weeks, learning her patterns, her preferences, her investment philosophy. She attended the monthly Cleveland Development Forum, a networking breakfast where industry professionals shared insights and made connections. The next meeting was Thursday morning at the Marriott downtown. I arrived early, positioning myself near the registration table with a clear view of the entrance. Helena walked in at exactly 8:30, her silver hair perfectly styled, her navy suit probably costing more than my car. She moved with the confidence of someone who owned every room she entered. I waited until she'd collected her coffee and found a seat before making my approach. "Ms. Ashford, Nathan Mercer, Meridian Development Group." I extended my hand, keeping my voice professional but warm. "I wondered if I might have a moment of your time." She studied me with sharp blue eyes, taking in my appearance, my demeanor, probably calculating my net worth and threat level in seconds. "Meridian Development," she repeated. "You're the company that stole Donovan Sinclair from Drake Industries." "We prefer to think of it as providing better service," I said with a slight smile. "But yes, we're working with Donovan on his Tremont project." "And you wanted to speak with me because?" because you're the smartest investor in Cleveland commercial real estate, and I thought you might be interested in hearing about a different approach to development management. Helena's lips quirked upward. Flattery, Mr. Mercer? Facts, Ms. Ashford. Your track record speaks for itself. She gestured to the empty chair across from her. You have 5 minutes. I sat down and opened my portfolio, pulling out a single sheet of paper. This is Donovan Sinclair's project timeline, original schedule from Drake Industries, revised schedule from Meridian. Helena studied the document, her expression neutral. You're claiming you can deliver the same project 4 months faster? Not claiming, guaranteeing. We've already pulled the permits Drake couldn't get, lined up the contractors they couldn't coordinate, and solved the zoning issues they couldn't navigate. How? By knowing the business, instead of just talking about it. I've been managing construction projects for 20 years. I know every inspector, every bureaucrat, every shortcut through the red tape. More importantly, I know how to build relationships based on competence rather than cocktail party conversations. Helena was quiet for a long moment, studying both the timeline and my face. You're suggesting that Drake Industries doesn't know the business? I'm suggesting that success requires more than a Harvard MBA and a nice office. It requires understanding the nuts and bolts of getting things done. And you understand those nuts and bolts? I am those nuts and bolts. She laughed, a genuine sound that transformed her entire face. That's either the most honest thing I've heard all week or the most arrogant. Probably both, I admitted. But the results speak for themselves. Helena handed the timeline back to me. What do you want, Mr. Mercer? Nothing today. I wanted to introduce myself, let you know that there are alternatives to the status quo. When you're ready to invest in competence over connections, you know how to reach me. I stood to leave, but Helena's voice stopped me. Mr. Mercer? How many clients have you taken from Drake Industries? So far, 3, but we're just getting started. That afternoon, I had lunch with Frank Morrison at a diner near the Meridian office. Frank had been working his network of subcontractors, spreading word about our company's approach to project management. You're making waves, Frank reported, cutting into a hamburger that probably violated several health regulations. People are talking about the new company that actually pays on time and treats contractors like human beings. Good. Word of mouth is the best advertising. Philip's people have been asking questions about you, trying to figure out where you came from, how you're financing the operation. Let them ask. Everything we're doing is legal and transparent. Frank grinned. That's what's driving them crazy. They keep looking for some angle, some dirty trick, but there isn't one. You're just better at their own game. For now. But we need to keep pushing, keep growing. Philip's not going to roll over and surrender his market share. What's the next move? I pulled out my phone and showed Frank a news article from that morning's Cleveland Business Journal. Morrison Construction just landed the contract for the new downtown office complex, $60 million project, 18-month timeline. Frank whistled. That's a big one. It's also exactly the kind of project Drake Industries has been pursuing for months. They submitted a proposal, had multiple meetings with the client, thought they had it locked up. But Morrison got it instead? Morrison got it because they partnered with a development management firm that understood the client's real priorities. Not the flashy presentation, not the expensive lunch meetings, results. Frank's eyes widened as he understood the implication. You're going after the big contracts now. I'm going after everything. Every client, every project, every relationship that makes Drake Industries profitable. By the time I'm finished, Philip Drake will be exactly what I used to be. Ordinary. That evening, I arrived home to find Camille in the kitchen, aggressively chopping vegetables for dinner. Her movements were sharp, angry, the knife hitting the cutting board with unnecessary force. Rough day? I asked, loosening my tie. Philip's having problems with some competitor. It's affecting everyone at the office. What kind of problems? Lost clients, missed opportunities, rumors about the company's stability. Someone's actively trying to destroy his business. I opened a beer and leaned against the counter, watching my wife take out her frustrations on an innocent bell pepper. Maybe the competition is just better. Camille's knife paused mid-chop. Better how? Better service, better results, better understanding of what clients actually want. Sometimes, the best company wins. Philip's company is the best. He's been doing this for 10 years, built it from nothing. And now someone else is building something from nothing. That's how business works. She turned to face me, her green eyes flashing with anger. You don't understand. This isn't fair competition. This is sabotage. Or maybe Philip isn't as good as you think he is. The words hung in the air between us, loaded with implications neither of us wanted to address directly. Camille's faith in Philip extended far beyond professional admiration, and we both knew it. He's brilliant, she said finally, her voice defensive. I'm sure he is, but brilliant doesn't guarantee success. Sometimes you need more than intelligence and charm. Sometimes you need to actually know how to do the work. Camille studied my face, looking for something she couldn't quite identify. You sound different when you talk about business lately, more confident. Maybe I'm learning things. What kind of things? I took a long sip of beer, considering my answer. That success isn't about being the smartest person in the room. It's about being the most prepared, the most dedicated, the most willing to do whatever it takes to win. And you think you're willing to do whatever it takes? I met her gaze directly, letting her see something I'd been hiding for months. I think you'd be surprised what I'm capable of. That night, I lay in bed planning my next move while Camille slept beside me. She'd been receiving more texts from Philip lately, their affair intensifying as his professional stress increased. Classic pattern. When men felt threatened in one area of their lives, they often overcompensated in another. Let them have their secret meetings, their stolen moments, their illusion of passion. Every text Philip sent to my wife was time he wasn't spending fixing his crumbling business empire. Every afternoon they spent together was an opportunity I could exploit to steal another client, secure another contract, build another relationship. Philip Drake thought he was winning because he had my wife. What he didn't realize was that he was losing everything else that actually mattered. By Christmas, Meridian Development Group had 6 clients, 12 active projects, and a reputation for delivering results ahead of schedule and under budget. We'd moved to a larger office, hired 3 additional employees, and established relationships with the best contractors and suppliers in the city. Drake Industries, meanwhile, had lost 8 clients, delayed 4 major projects, and was facing questions from investors about their declining performance. Philip was working longer hours, drinking more, and making increasingly desperate attempts to maintain his company's reputation. The erosion was working exactly as planned. Slowly, steadily, inexorably, everything that made Philip Drake special was washing away. And the best part? He still had no idea who was responsible. January brought Cleveland's typical gray misery, but I'd never felt more energized. Meridian Development Group started the new year with 14 active projects and a waiting list of potential clients. We'd outgrown our second office and were moving into a renovated warehouse in the flats, complete with conference rooms, a proper reception area, and my name on the door. Nathan Mercer, President and CEO. I never got tired of seeing those words. The morning of our office warming party, I stood in my new corner office looking out at the Cuyahoga River and the Cleveland skyline beyond. 18 months ago, I'd been an ordinary project manager driving a dented Honda to a job that barely paid my bills. Now I commanded a company that was reshaping Cleveland's commercial development landscape. Everything you're not had become everything you are. The caterers are here, Tanya announced from my doorway. She'd become my de facto operations manager, handling the day-to-day details that kept our growing company running smoothly. And Helena Ashford just confirmed she's coming. Helena's attendance was a major victory. Her presence would legitimize Meridian in the eyes of Cleveland's business community and send a clear message about where the smart money was placing its bets. What about the media? Cleveland Business Journal is sending a photographer. Channel 5 wants to do a brief interview about the company's growth. I nodded, straightening my tie. The media attention was important, but not for the reasons most people would assume. I wasn't interested in personal fame or recognition. I wanted Philip Drake to turn on the evening news and see his former nobody rival being celebrated as Cleveland's rising business star. The party started at 6. By 6:30, our new office was packed with contractors, suppliers, city officials, and potential clients. I worked the room methodically, building relationships, cementing partnerships, positioning Meridian for continued growth. Impressive turnout, Helena Ashford commented, appearing at my elbow with a glass of wine. You've made quite an impact in a short time. We've been fortunate to work with excellent clients, I replied. Success breeds success. And what about Drake Industries? I understand they're struggling. I kept my expression neutral. I don't really follow the competition, too busy focusing on our own projects. Helena smiled knowingly. Of course, though I imagine Philip Drake follows your projects quite closely. I wouldn't know. He's been asking questions about your financing, your client acquisition strategy, your background. Seems quite concerned about your company's rapid growth. Competition can be unsettling for established players, especially when they're not used to actual competition. Helena took a sip of wine, studying my face. I've been thinking about our conversation last year, about investing in competence over connections. And I'm ready to have a more detailed discussion. Are you interested in expanding Meridian's capabilities? My pulse quickened, but I kept my voice steady. What did you have in mind? Lunch tomorrow, my office. Bring your business plan and your growth projections. Helena moved away before I could respond, leaving me with the tantalizing possibility of major investment backing. With her financial support, Meridian could bid on larger projects, hire more staff, accelerate our expansion timeline. We could destroy Drake Industries completely within 6 months. The Channel 5 interview went perfectly. I talked about Meridian's commitment to delivering results, our focus on client satisfaction, our plans for continued growth. The reporter asked about our rapid success, and I gave her the soundbite I'd been preparing for months. Success isn't about having the biggest office or the fanciest marketing materials, I said, looking directly into the camera. It's about understanding your client's needs and having the competence to deliver results. Everything else is just noise. The segment aired during the 11 o'clock news. I watched it from home, sitting in my living room, while Camille worked late at the office. Another late night with Philip, another opportunity for me to savor my growing success without her interference. My phone buzzed with congratulatory messages from clients, employees, and business contacts. Frank Morrison sent a photo of himself raising a beer to the television. Tanya texted a string of celebration emojis. Even my brother Ben called from his auto shop to say he'd seen the interview. Look at you, Mr. Big Shot CEO, Ben said, his voice warm with pride. Mom would have been proud. Thanks, Ben. That means a lot. You've really turned things around. I remember when you were complaining about that job, feeling stuck, wondering if you'd ever amount to anything. I remembered, too, the long conversations in Ben's garage, working on cars while I vented about my stalled career and failing marriage. Ben had always believed I was capable of more, even when I didn't believe it myself. Sometimes you just need the right motivation, I said. Speaking of motivation, how are things with Camille? She seemed pretty distant at Christmas. Camille's focused on her career right now. And you're okay with that? I looked around my empty living room, thinking about my wife's absence, her affair, her complete ignorance of my transformation. I'm focused on my career too. We're both getting what we want. The next morning, I arrived at Helena Ashford's office with a comprehensive business plan, detailed financial projections, and a proposal for strategic expansion. Her office occupied the top floor of the Ashford building, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of Lake Erie. "Impressive presentation," Helena said after reviewing my materials. "You're proposing to double your workforce and triple your project capacity within 12 months. Conservative estimates, actually. The demand is there, and we have the expertise to deliver." "What about competition from Drake Industries? Philip's not going to surrender market share without a fight." I leaned forward, meeting her gaze directly. "Drake Industries is a declining asset. They've lost focus, lost clients, lost credibility. The market is ready for new leadership." "And you're that leadership?" "We're that leadership. Meridian represents everything the commercial development industry should be: competent, reliable, results-oriented. Drake represents everything it shouldn't be: style over substance, promises over performance." Helena was quiet for a long moment, studying my face. "You sound like you have personal experience with Drake's shortcomings." "I have professional experience with companies that prioritize image over results. It never ends well." "No," she agreed. "It doesn't." She offered me a $5 million investment package in exchange for 30% equity in Meridian Development Group. The terms were generous, the timeline aggressive, the upside transformative. A year ago, an offer like that would have rattled me. The kind you overanalyze, second-guess, and fear might be a trap. But I didn't hesitate. I didn't ask for time. I recognized it for what it was: confirmation. I accepted immediately. That afternoon, I called an all-hands meeting at the Meridian office. Our entire staff, now 15 people, gathered in the main conference room, some standing along the walls, others perched on the edges of chairs, curiosity and nervous energy thick in the air. I could see it in their faces, hope mixed with disbelief. Most of them had come to Meridian after being passed over, downsized, or quietly pushed out by larger firms that didn't know what to do with people who actually cared about quality. I laid out our expansion plans in detail, new hires across every department, bigger projects we'd previously walked away from because we lacked capital, aggressive growth targets that would have sounded insane coming from anyone else. I didn't oversell it. I didn't dramatize. I spoke plainly, confidently, like a man stating facts rather than dreams. "We're not just competing with Drake Industries anymore," I announced. "We're replacing them. By the end of this year, Meridian will be the premier commercial development firm in Cleveland." The room erupted in applause. Not polite applause, real applause. The kind that comes from people who've been waiting to hear someone say out loud what they already felt in their bones. These were good people, talented professionals who'd been overlooked or undervalued by other companies because they didn't play politics well enough or didn't fit the right mold. They believed in our mission because they'd experienced the alternative firsthand. Tanya stayed after the meeting to discuss implementation details. She closed the conference room door behind the last employee and leaned against the table, exhaling slowly. "This is incredible, Nathan," she said. "But are you sure we can handle this kind of growth?" I didn't bluff. I didn't posture. I met her concern head on. "We can handle anything," I said confidently. "We have something our competition doesn't." She raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "We actually know how to do the work." That evening, I celebrated with dinner at the most expensive restaurant in Cleveland. Not because I needed the luxury. I'd learned by then that money loses its thrill quickly, but because I wanted to mark the moment, to draw a line between who I had been and who I was now. The service was flawless, the wine excellent, the room full of people who measured worth in whispered deals and subtle glances. The transformation was complete. Nathan Mercer, ordinary project manager, no longer existed. In his place sat a successful CEO, a rising business star, a man who commanded respect and delivered results. I didn't feel giddy. I felt settled, like I'd finally stepped into the life that had been waiting for me all along. Everything Philip Drake had been, I had become. Everything he had built, I was taking. Not out of spite alone, but because he'd proven he didn't deserve to keep it. The only thing left was making sure he understood exactly what had happened to him. I was finishing my dessert when I saw them. Philip and Camille entering the restaurant's bar area, her hand on his arm, both of them laughing at some private joke. They looked happy, relaxed, untouched by consequence, completely unaware that their world was already collapsing, one contract, one client, one quiet defection at a time. I paid my check and walked past their table on my way out. Neither of them noticed me. Why would they? In their minds, I was still nobody. Ordinary Nathan Mercer, Camille's boring husband, who would never amount to anything. But as I reached the exit, I turned back and caught Philip's eye. For just a moment, our gazes met across the crowded restaurant. I smiled and raised my hand in a small wave, the casual gesture of a man acknowledging an old acquaintance. Philip's expression shifted, from confusion to recognition to something approaching fear. He knew who I was now. He'd seen the news coverage, heard the industry gossip, understood that the nobody who'd been stealing his clients had a name, a face, and momentum. He whispered something to Camille, who turned to look in my direction, but I was already gone. Let them wonder. Let them worry. Let them spend the evening dissecting that moment, replaying my smile, trying to calculate how far this had already gone. Because tomorrow, the real war would begin. The Cleveland Business Journal's morning headline read, "Meridian Development Secures Major Investment, Plans Aggressive Expansion." The article featured a photo of me shaking hands with Helena Ashford, both of us smiling confidently in her elegant office. I was reading the piece over coffee when Camille finally came home from her night with Philip. She looked tired, stressed, her usual polished appearance slightly disheveled. "We need to talk," she said, dropping her purse on the kitchen counter. "Good morning to you too." She studied my face, looking for something she couldn't quite identify. "Philip knows who you are." "I would hope so. We've been married for 12 years. Don't play games, Nathan. He knows about your company, about what you've been doing." I folded the newspaper carefully, taking my time. "What have I been doing?" "You've been stealing his clients, sabotaging his business, pretending to be something you're not." "Actually, I've been providing better service to clients who were dissatisfied with their current provider. It's called competition." Camille's eyes flashed with anger. "You lied to me. You've been running a company behind my back, using inside information to target Philip's clients." "What inside information?" "Don't act innocent. You knew about his projects, his client relationships, his business strategies." I stood up slowly, meeting her gaze directly. "I knew what you told me. Every dinner conversation where you praised Philip's brilliance, every late night where you explained his latest deal, every morning where you shared his concerns about difficult clients. You gave me a master class in Drake Industries operations." The color drained from her face as she realized the implications. "You used me. You used yourself. I just listened. This is insane. You're a project manager, not a CEO. You can't just decide to become something you're not." "Why not? Philip did it. Harvard MBA, daddy's money, 10 years of playing dress-up as a successful businessman. If he can fake it until he makes it, why can't I?" "Because he's actually successful. He built a real company with real clients and real profits." "Had," I corrected. Past tense. Drake Industries is hemorrhaging clients, bleeding money, and facing serious questions from investors. Philip's empire is collapsing, and there's nothing he can do to stop it. Camille stared at me like I was a stranger. "What happened to you? You used to be normal, predictable. I used to be everything you didn't want. Now I'm everything you said you admired. Rich, powerful, successful. Funny how that works. This isn't you, Nathan. This is some kind of midlife crisis, some fantasy about being important." I walked to the kitchen window and looked out at our modest neighborhood. Starter homes, practical cars, ordinary people living ordinary lives, everything I'd been, everything I'd left behind. "You're right," I said finally. "This isn't me." The old me was content with mediocrity, satisfied with scraps, willing to accept whatever life handed him. The new me wants more. "And what about us? What about our marriage?" I turned to face her, seeing my wife clearly for perhaps the first time in years. Still beautiful, still sharp, still completely focused on her own needs and desires. "What marriage, Camille? When was the last time we had dinner together? When was the last time you asked about my day, my dreams, my plans? When was the last time you looked at me like I mattered? That's not fair." "Fair? You've been having an affair with your boss for months, rubbing my face in it every single day, making me feel like a failure in my own home. And you want to talk about fair?" Her composure cracked. "How did you—" "I'm not stupid, Camille. I never was. I was just ordinary. But ordinary doesn't mean blind." We stood in silence for a long moment, 12 years of marriage reduced to this moment of brutal honesty. "What do you want?" she asked finally. "I want you to watch what happens next. I want you to see Philip lose everything that made him special. His company, his reputation, his confidence, everything you admired about him. And then what? Then you'll understand that you chose the wrong man." Camille left without another word. I watched her drive away, probably heading back to Philip's office to report on our conversation. Let them strategize. Let them plan their counterattack. It was too late for defensive measures. That afternoon, I implemented the final phase of my plan. The Morrison Downtown Complex was the largest commercial development project in Cleveland's recent history. $60 million, 18 months, a mixed-use facility that would reshape the city's skyline. Drake Industries had been pursuing the contract for over a year, investing significant time and resources in their proposal. They were going to lose it to Meridian Development Group. I'd been cultivating a relationship with the project's decision-makers for months, demonstrating our company's capabilities through smaller projects, building trust through consistent performance. When they expressed concerns about Drake's recent struggles, I was ready with solutions. "The question isn't whether you can afford to hire Meridian," I told the selection committee during our final presentation. "The question is whether you can afford not to. Your timeline is aggressive, your budget is tight, your reputation is on the line. You need a development partner who delivers results, not excuses." I presented our track record. 14 projects completed on time and under budget, 0 client complaints, a growing roster of satisfied customers. Then I presented Drake Industries' recent performance: delayed projects, cost overruns, client defections, management instability. "This isn't about choosing the biggest company," I concluded. "It's about choosing the best company." The committee voted unanimously to award the contract to Meridian. The announcement hit the Cleveland business community like an earthquake. Drake Industries' stock price plummeted. 3 more clients terminated their contracts. 2 key employees resigned. Philip Drake's empire didn't just crack, it shattered. I was in my office reviewing the Morrison contract when Tanya knocked on my door. "There's someone here to see you. Says it's urgent." Philip Drake stood in my reception area, his expensive suit wrinkled, his usually perfect hair disheveled. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in days. "We need to talk," he said when he saw me. I gestured toward my office. "Of course. Always happy to meet with fellow industry professionals." He followed me inside, his eyes taking in the modern furniture, the awards on the walls, the view of downtown Cleveland through floor-to-ceiling windows. "Nice office," he said, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "Must have cost a fortune." Success has its rewards. I settled behind my desk, maintaining the relaxed posture of a man completely in control. "What can I do for you, Philip?" "You can stop this charade and tell me what you really want." "I'm not sure I understand." "Cut the innocent act. You've been systematically destroying my company for months, stealing clients, spreading rumors, sabotaging deals. What's your end game? I leaned back in my chair, studying his face. The famous Philip Drake charm was nowhere to be seen. In its place was desperation, fear, the look of a man watching his life's work disappear. I haven't stolen anything, I said calmly. I've simply provided better service to clients who were dissatisfied with their current provider. Better service? You're a nobody, a project manager with delusions of grandeur. I corrected. I was a project manager. Now I'm the CEO of Cleveland's fastest-growing development firm. Funny how things change. Philip's hands clenched into fists. You think you've won? You think you can just waltz in and take everything I've built? I don't think anything, Philip. I know. Your company is finished. Your clients are gone. Your investors are asking uncomfortable questions. Face it, you've lost. This isn't over. Yes, it is. I stood up, walking to the window that overlooked the city. You know what your problem was, Philip? You thought success was about image, the right clothes, the right car, the right office. But success is about competence, and you were never as competent as you pretended to be. And you are? I turned to face him. I am everything you're not. The words hung in the air between us, loaded with meaning we both understood. I was quoting his girlfriend, my wife, throwing her cruel assessment back in his face. Camille told you, he said, understanding dawning in his eyes. Camille told me a lot of things, about your brilliance, your success, your superiority. She was very thorough in explaining exactly why you were better than me. So this is about her? About your marriage? This is about you taking something that didn't belong to you and thinking there would be no consequences. You were wrong. Philip stared at me for a long moment, perhaps seeing me clearly for the first time. Not ordinary Nathan Mercer, the boring husband who could be safely ignored, but the man who had systematically dismantled his empire. You're insane, he said finally. No, I'm successful. There's a difference. He left without another word. I watched from my window as he walked to his black Mercedes, the same car Camille had admired so many times, and drove away. That evening, I attended the Cleveland Development Forum's monthly networking event. The room buzzed with conversation about Meridian's Morrison contract, Drake Industries' troubles, and the shifting landscape of Cleveland commercial development. Helena Ashford found me near the bar, her expression amused. You've certainly made an impression, Nathan. Half the room wants to hire you, the other half wants to figure out how you did it. And which half are you in? The half that's very glad we're partners. She raised her wine glass in a toast. To competence over connections. To delivering results instead of promises. As we talked, I noticed Camille across the room. She was standing alone near the entrance, scanning the crowd with obvious anxiety. When our eyes met, she started walking toward me. Excuse me, I told Helena. I need to handle something. Camille intercepted me halfway across the room. She looked exhausted, defeated, nothing like the confident woman who had once itemized my professional inferiority. Can we talk? She asked quietly. Here? Somewhere private. I led her to a quiet corner away from the main crowd. What's on your mind? Philip's company is finished. The Morrison contract was the final blow. I heard, unfortunate for him. Stop pretending you don't know exactly what you've done. I studied her face, seeing something I hadn't expected. Respect. For the first time in years, Camille was looking at me like I mattered. What do you want, Camille? I want to understand. Why didn't you tell me about the company? Why did you let me think you were still the same ordinary project manager? Because you needed to see the transformation happen. You needed to watch Philip lose everything that made him special, while I gained everything that made me ordinary. And now you know that you chose the wrong man. She was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications. What happens next? Next, you decide what you want your life to look like. You can stay with Philip and watch him try to rebuild from nothing, or you can come home to the man who actually became everything you said you wanted. And if I choose to come home? I looked at her beautiful, calculating face and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. The door is closed, Camille. You made your choice when you decided I wasn't good enough. Now you get to live with the consequences. Her composure finally cracked. Nathan, please, I made a mistake. I can see that now. You made a choice. You chose Philip because he was everything I wasn't. Rich, powerful, successful. Well, congratulations. You got exactly what you wanted. A man who's lost everything that made him attractive to you. I walked away, leaving her standing alone in the corner of the room where Cleveland's business elite celebrated success and commiserated over failure. Everything you're not had become everything you are. And the door was permanently closed. The rooftop of the Meridian building offered the best view in Cleveland. 20 stories above the city, with Lake Erie stretching to the horizon and the downtown skyline glittering in the evening light. I stood at the edge of the terrace, watching storm clouds gather over the water, and reflected on how much had changed in 18 months. Tonight was Meridian Development Group's official launch party for the Morrison Downtown Complex. The project that had destroyed Drake Industries was now the crown jewel of my empire, a $60 million testament to what competence could accomplish when properly applied. "Quite a view," Helena Ashford said, joining me at the railing. She looked elegant as always, her silver hair catching the light from the party behind us. "You've come a long way from that coffee shop conversation. We both have. Your investment made all of this possible. My investment, your vision, your execution. That's what partnerships should look like." Below us, the party was in full swing. 200 guests filled the rooftop terrace, clients, contractors, city officials, media representatives, and business leaders from across Cleveland. The who's who of commercial development, all celebrating Meridian's rise to prominence. "Have you seen the latest numbers?" Helena asked, pulling out her phone. "Drake Industries filed for bankruptcy this morning, officially." I felt a surge of satisfaction, cold and complete. "Philip? Gone. The board voted him out last week. He's apparently trying to start some kind of consulting firm, but no one's returning his calls." 18 months of systematic destruction, and it was finally over. Philip Drake had lost everything: his company, his reputation, his clients, his future. Everything that had made him special, everything Camille had admired, reduced to nothing. "And Mrs. Mercer?" Helena asked delicately. "I heard there were some personal complications." Camille made her choice. She chose to bet on the wrong horse. That must have been difficult. Actually, it was liberating, discovering that the woman you married values success over loyalty, image over substance. It clarifies things. Helena studied my profile in the fading light. "You sound like a man who's found exactly what he was looking for." I found exactly what I needed. The knowledge that I was capable of more than anyone believed, including myself. The party continued behind us, laughter and conversation mixing with the sound of jazz music from the hired quartet. I watched the storm clouds moving closer to shore, lightning flickering in their depths. "Mr. Mercer?" Tanya appeared at my shoulder, looking apologetic for the interruption. "There's someone here who insists on speaking with you. Security tried to turn them away, but—" I turned to see Camille walking across the terrace, moving through the crowd with determined purpose. She wore a black dress I'd never seen before, her hair styled differently, her makeup perfect, despite the stress lines around her eyes. "I'll handle this," I told Helena, who nodded and melted back into the party. Camille approached slowly, her gaze taking in the elegant surroundings, the successful crowd, the obvious prosperity of everything around her. "Impressive," she said when she reached me. "This is really what you built?" "This is what competence looks like when properly applied." She winced at the reference to our previous conversations. Can we talk? Privately? I gestured toward a quiet corner of the terrace away from the main crowd. Storm winds were picking up, rustling the decorative plants and making the party lights sway. What do you want, Camille? I want to apologize. For everything. For not seeing what you were capable of. For not supporting your dreams. For... She paused, struggling with the words. For Philip. Apology noted. That's it? That's all you have to say? I studied her face, seeing desperation beneath the carefully applied makeup. What did you expect? Forgiveness? Reconciliation? A tearful reunion where we pretend the last 18 months never happened? I expected the man I married, the one who loved me despite my flaws. That man was everything you didn't want, remember? Ordinary, predictable, boring. You made it very clear that he wasn't good enough for you. I was wrong. No, you were honest. Brutally, completely honest about what you valued and what you didn't. I'm grateful for that honesty. It motivated me to become something better. Thunder rumbled overhead, and the first drops of rain began to fall. Most of the party guests moved toward the covered areas, but Camille and I remained at the railing. What about us? She asked. What about our marriage, our history, everything we built together? We didn't build anything together, Camille. I built a mediocre life that you tolerated while dreaming of something better. When that something better appeared, you took it. Simple as that. And now that it's gone, now you want to come back to the safe choice, the reliable option, the man who's proven he can provide the lifestyle you want. She flinched as if I'd struck her. That's not... I mean, yes, seeing what you've accomplished, it's impressive. But that's not why I'm here. Then why are you here? Because I miss you. The real you. The man who used to make me laugh. Who used to hold me when I had bad dreams. Who used to believe that love was enough. I felt something shift in my chest. A crack in the armor I'd built around my heart. For just a moment, I remembered what it had felt like to love her unconditionally, to believe that we were partners in building a life together. Then I remembered the texts on her phone, the late nights, the cruel comparisons, the systematic destruction of my self-worth. That man is gone, I said quietly. You helped destroy him. People can change. You did. Yes, I did. I became everything you said you wanted, rich, powerful, successful. But I also became something else. Someone who understands that respect isn't given, it's earned. Someone who knows that loyalty is a choice, not an obligation. The rain was falling harder now, driving most of the remaining guests inside. Camille's perfect hair was beginning to wilt, her makeup starting to run. So that's it? 12 years of marriage and you're just going to throw it away? I'm not throwing anything away. You already did that when you chose Philip over me. I'm simply accepting the consequences of your choice. What if I choose you now? What if I come home and we try to rebuild? I looked at her beautiful, desperate face and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. The door is closed, Camille. Nathan, please. You said Philip was everything I'm not. Richer, smarter, more powerful. You were right. But you made one crucial mistake. What mistake? You assumed that everything I wasn't was permanent. You assumed I would always be ordinary, always be mediocre, always be less than what you wanted. Lightning flashed overhead, illuminating the storm-lashed terrace. Most of the party had moved inside now, leaving us alone in the rain. The city lights below flickered and blurred through the sheets of water, turning Cleveland into a distorted painting of glass and steel. Wind tugged at the tablecloths and rattled empty glasses, as if the night itself were urging a conclusion neither of us could avoid. I proved you wrong, I continued, raising my voice just enough to be heard over the storm. I became everything you said you admired. I built the company, the influence, the leverage. I learned how this world works and how to win in it. I stepped closer, close enough that she couldn't look away. But in the process, I also became something you never expected. Someone who doesn't need your approval anymore. I love you, she said desperately. The words came out fast, panicked, like a lifeline thrown too late. Rain soaked her hair and dress, washing away the polish she'd worn so carefully all evening. You love what I've become, I said calmly. The success, the power, the money. You love the version of me other people applaud. But you didn't love what I was, and you destroyed what we had when it wasn't impressive enough for you. I shook my head slowly. Some things can't be rebuilt once you tear them down. Camille stared at me for a long moment, rain streaming down her face, her perfect composure finally completely shattered. For the first time, there was no calculation in her eyes, no strategy, just fear and loss. What am I supposed to do now? She asked, her voice barely louder than the rain. Whatever you want, I said. You're a smart, capable woman. Build your own success instead of trying to attach yourself to someone else's. Figure out who you are when there's no one left to climb. I paused, letting that sink in. And us? There is no us, I said without hesitation. There's you, and there's me, and there's a closed door between us that's never going to open again. She stood there for another second, as if waiting for me to soften, to take it back, to offer even the smallest crack in that door. When it didn't come, she turned and walked away without another word, her heels clicking on the wet concrete as she disappeared into the elevator, swallowed by glass and steel. I watched her go, feeling nothing but the cold satisfaction of a completed mission. Not triumph, not joy, just finality. Behind me, the party continued in the covered areas of the terrace. I could hear laughter, conversation, the clink of glasses as Cleveland's business elite celebrated success and forged new partnerships. My success, my partnerships, my empire. Deals were being made a few yards away while a chapter of my life closed for good. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the evening's messages. Congratulations from clients, interview requests from media outlets, partnership proposals from other companies eager to align themselves with momentum. The fruits of 18 months of systematic effort, of discipline, of becoming everything I'd never been allowed to be. Frank Morrison appeared beside me, holding 2 beers and grinning despite the rain. Hell of a party, boss, though most folks are smart enough to come in from the storm. I accepted the beer gratefully, the cold glass grounding me. Sometimes you need to stand in the rain to appreciate what you've built. Speaking of what you've built, did you see the news about Drake Industries? Helena mentioned it, I said. Bankruptcy? Complete liquidation. Philip's trying to start over, but nobody wants to work with him. Word is he's broke, desperate, burning through what little savings he had left. I took a long drink of beer, savoring the moment, not rushing it. And Camille? Saw her leaving a few minutes ago. Looked pretty upset. She made her choice, I said. Now she gets to live with it. Frank studied my face in the lightning-illuminated darkness, as if looking for doubt or regret. You really did it, didn't you? Took everything that made him special and made it yours instead. I became everything I wasn't, I said. Everything she said she wanted. And now? Now I build something even bigger, I replied. The Morrison Project is just the beginning. Thunder crashed overhead, and the storm reached its full intensity. Rain lashed the terrace, wind whipped through the party decorations, and lightning turned the sky white with electric fury. The night felt alive, charged, like the final act of a long-running play. I stood at the railing, looking out over the city I was reshaping, and felt the deep satisfaction of a man who had achieved exactly what he set out to accomplish. Everything you're not had become everything you are. Philip Drake was finished, broke, broken, forgotten. Camille was alone, abandoned by the man she'd chosen, rejected by the man she'd discarded. And I was everything they'd never expected me to become, rich, powerful, successful, and completely free of the ordinary life that had once defined me. The door was closed, and it would stay that way forever. Lightning flashed again, illuminating the storm-swept terrace and the man who stood alone at its center, master of his own empire, architect of his own revenge, everything he'd never been and everything he'd always had, the potential